Okay, so I've got my iced coffee. I've got my eyes are awake. I've got my script here. I haven't uploaded a video in a good few months, but I wanted to make sure that this video would be really good. So here I am. I'm going to be talking about Animal Crossing today, and before I get any deeper into this video, I do want to say that Animal Crossing is a franchise that is very near and dear to my heart. It's one that I do care a lot about. So, what I'm talking about here comes from a very difficult place, which is why this video took so long to produce. Animal Crossing is a franchise that has been around in America since the GameCube era, but the first game in the series was released on the Nintendo 64 in Japan. With the release of the latest game in the franchise, Animal Crossing has reached the age of 19 and has a multitude of fans across the world. Many different types of people enjoy Animal Crossing: hardcore gamers, casual gamers, people who own every game in the franchise, and people who've only played one or two games in the franchise. As for myself, I really didn't get the appeal until I grabbed a copy of Animal Crossing New Leaf. The excellent sound effects, the comfortable aesthetic of the town, the cute characters, and the happy nature of the game confused me in how much I enjoyed it all. But there was something that bothered me about the game that I didn't know would be a problem until I reached the character creation screen. In Animal Crossing, for all the smiles and joy it brought other fans of the franchise, it wasn't really made with black or brown skin in mind. Even with the 3DS release in 2012, black and brown skin tone options were actually not present during character selection. I didn't know this about the franchise, but until the release of Animal Crossing Pocket Camp for smartphones, the franchise featured a de facto exclusion of black and brown skin. This isn't listed on Wikipedia or really mentioned in any of the reviews at the time, but this was and still is deeply alienating. There are probably reasons that the franchise didn't think to include black and brown skin tones as starting options for the first 14 years of its existence. But I'm actually not here to defend a franchise that has pushed billions of copies. Instead, today I'm going to talk about why skin color exclusionism in the Animal Crossing franchise is indicative of broader issues with the game industry as a whole, and how this otherwise cute franchise has helped perpetuate a malicious decision that, for many white people, has gone under the radar. Animal Crossing isn't ignorant to the existence of black and brown skin. Actually, the franchise has included black and brown skin since the first game. You just needed to get a tan. Tanning is one of the most deeply upsetting ways I've had to go about trying to add myself to a game, and this is made worse as, throughout the process of doing so, I can't help but feel that the process was intentionally made to feel malicious. Exclusionary in design. Intended to keep black and brown player-controlled villagers to a rarity. The saying that the Animal Crossing community has repeatedly fed me is that the game reflects a Japanese town, something wholly ignorant to the actual makeup of modern Japanese ethnic divides, and as such, the players presented are supposed to be all Asian descended, which almost makes sense on the surface, as Asia has a fairly broad sense of strokes when it comes to people with melanin, but well, let's just cut to the place. White people do not turn into black people when they tan. If you've ever seen a white person after a long day in the sun, you know that they turn red due to a lack of melanin in their skin. But if you've never been part of a white or Asian family, you know that black and brown people are not born white. In fact, the opposite is true. Black and brown skin, for the majority of people that have melanin, is something that we have had since birth. It is not, as the game would apparently like you to believe, that I was born with white skin and that by the power of the sun I was altered into brownness. Nintendo at the time did almost seem to understand this, as the Mii's first introduced with the Nintendo Wii allow users to set their skin tone fairly freely, which made the exclusion of proper skin tone options in New Leaf deeply confusing to me when I played the game in 2012, 6 years after the release of the Nintendo Wii console. The mechanic is partially based on an aspect of how melanin functions, but it is completely ignorant to the starting position not actually being the same for all people. Tanning as a mechanic for many white people that played the game was something to avoid, and there were a plethora of options that allowed you to avoid tanning. Now, this leads me to my main point about the franchise. Is it really inclusion if I have to jump through a million hoops to get the desired result that most players want to avoid? Some would argue that the tanning system is actually a step in the right direction as far as fighting colorism and anti-blackness, but this is a foolish belief. Colorism will not be solved by people assuming that I used to be a lighter-skinned person. Colorism will not be solved by whites and Asians assuming dark-skinned people simply baked in the sun longer than them. The reality is that mechanics like this de-emphasize the realities of colorism and anti-blackness. They push and hold the concepts out of sight and out of mind for those without melanin, and they perpetuate the feelings of exclusion for people with melanin. They make the perpetual aspect of my life and many other people's lives something that devs can shrug off and feign ignorance to, while more malicious types of pale-skinned people use it to live out their evil fantasies of literal and de facto segregation. I can't really explain the joy I felt when I saw I could just play as myself in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. At least, not to a white person. Pocket Camp being an objectively worse game than any of the other Animal Crossing games, I still put a lot of time into it purely because I could finally just play the game. I still had a lot of issues with the skin tone options in Pocket Camp, especially with darker skin tone options not being available. This is something that a color slider would easily solve, as opposed to using multiple color palettes in a limited set. But I didn't have to arbitrarily choose short sleeve shirts. I didn't have to not wear a hat. I didn't have to worry about getting too dark or staying too light. I didn't have to buy a me-styled face mask that didn't even change the color of my hands. I didn't have to worry about not touching the game for a few days and returning to find my player avatar had morphed into a white person, which, by the way, is actually very nightmarish. I could finally just play the game and escape like everyone else into the comfort of my neighbors and some freshly picked fruit. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, consider becoming a patron, liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment, as that helps my analytics. If you really enjoyed the video, you can send me some money via Ko-fi, as I don't have any advertisements on this channel that go to me, and that just helps pay my rent and allows me to continue making videos and content for the future. Anyway, as always, thank you very much, and a very special thanks to Thought Slime, who decided to give me a shout out last week. The analytics boost from that, and the viewership boost, and the subscriber boost on Twitch is actually amazing and insane. I am so deeply thankful for that. So, until next time, Cupridge out.